Right, so we've had to hop back in the car. We're not even able to watch the penalty. A fight almost kicked off. The man left and came back with a gun. I swear, you saw it, right?
My name's Ellie Menjum, and for the past few years I've been traversing Europe, documenting the tales of football clubs and their fan bases who've been on the verge of winning something for the first time in a long time, if not ever. From northern Turkey to southern Spain, from southwest Germany to the Basque Country, I've been on a mission to show how important it is that the game has a variety of winners so that we learn about new places, new people, new cultures, and most importantly, new stories. Then came the 2022 FIFA World Cup, where I knew the exact once-in-a-lifetime story I had to tell. So as the world's media descended on Qatar to be at the tournament, Copenhagen and I decided to fly 8,000 miles in the opposite direction to tell the ultimate story of a football fan base on the brink of ending a 36-year wait for the biggest prize in sport. But what we found was a story that transcended football, a story that reached into the very soul of a nation that laid itself bare over 2 fateful weeks. A story that etched a struggle for identity and a search for glory that began over 2 centuries ago. A story about Lionel Messi, Argentina, and 45 million people yearning to reclaim their place in history. This is the all-angle, on-the-ground, as-it-happened, ultimate account of perhaps the greatest football story of our time. This is Once in a Lifetime.
How many years have you been covering football as a journalist?
I've been working football 24 years now.
And how many matches do you think you've covered?
2,000, something like that.
Have you ever seen a footballer like Messi?
No. Not close. His level of consistency is astonishing. For 17, 18 years, scored 30 goals a season, got 15, 20 assists a season. And nobody in the entire history of football has had anything like that level.
Born and raised in Argentina's second city of Rosario, the moment Lionel Andres Messi took to the uneven pitch of his local football club, Grandoli, the game of football changed forever.
And he starts dribbling past everybody, and suddenly his brothers realise this isn't normal.
By 7, he signed to boyhood club Newell's Old Boys. By 13, he signed by FC Barcelona. By 16, he's already in their first squad, and by 21, he's the star of Pep Guardiola's legendary side.
They're the greatest team I've ever seen. And Messi is the best player in the best team I've ever seen. He's what takes that side and turns it from being very, very, very good to utterly exceptional.
The next decade and a half sees Messi achieve every club and individual award several times over, with goals, assists and performances that truly defy belief. But don't take my word for it.
Lionel is for me the best.
He's a one-off for me, and it was just great to be in the same stadium as him.
But Leo is just a freak. What he does is unheard of. I mean, I don't know if you will see that ever again.
Then there's his stats with the club. 10 La Ligas, 7 Copa del Reys, 4 Champions Leagues, 3 FIFA Club World Cups, 534 goals and 303 assists. Each and every season, Messi seemed to raise the bar to new heights for FC Barcelona. But back in Argentina, things are a bit more complicated.
And Messi is like, I don't know.
Wait, you still believe that to this day?
Yes, to this day.
You see, for many Argentinians, as happy as they were to see a compatriot at the top of world football again, the reality was, whilst he may have won everything at Barca, when it comes to Argentina, despite his record amount of goals and assists for the country, whenever Messi went to a tournament with the national team, they came home empty-handed.
Messi is like having a son that you know he can do better. He can do better, but he's not doing it.
There's this desperate desire for him to pick up from Maradona, for him to lead them to glory. When that doesn't happen, there's this intense frustration.
Deep inside, we love him, but he needs to win. He needs to win, you know? That's it.
And of course they're proud of what he does for Barcelona, but he's doing it for Barcelona. Argentinian fans want him to do it for Argentina.
Este país, con todas nuestras dificultades, nuestras carencias, le exigen a Messi hacer todo como si fuera Dios y nos salve.
Como si fuera Maradona y nos salve.
But surely the idea is Messi must lead them to glory. It doesn't happen.
Firstly, there's the World Cup heartbreak, where in 2006 he only plays a bit part role, which sees a quarter-final exit. In 2010 he plays every match, but once again, they're out in the quarters. Then came the 2014 World Cup in Brazil, where Messi scores 4 goals, earns player of the tournament, and leads Argentina to their first final in 24 years.
But he took you to a World Cup final.
Yes, but we didn't win.
and it's like that for you.
Who remembers the guy who came in second?
I mean, it's ludicrous, and I suspect most of them know it's ludicrous. That doesn't stop the yearning.
And that thing, you know, inside of me, even if I know logically that it's not okay, it's still there, lingering somewhere.
It's a mix of like the way of the Argentinian and so many years of not being able to actually winning it. Sometimes coming really close, like in Brazil, you know, it was like a dream come true to win it in Brazil at the Maracanã Stadium.
But I'm willing to say this. If he would have scored a goal in 2014 and we would have won the World Cup in Brazil, everything would be different.
Argentinian fans want him to do it for Argentina. Maradona did it for Argentina. Why can't Messi? If he's so good, why can't he do this?
No, pero nunca jugó ni la mitad de lo que jugaba en Barcelona.
Inclusive yo, no podía creer cómo la magia que hacía en el Barcelona y no en la selección.
No me convenció demasiado, porque venía de la sombra de Maradona.
But in speaking to younger Argentinians, it's evident that this isn't a sentiment shared by all.
¿Quién es mejor, Messi o Maradona?
Messi.
The younger generation lives football a very different way.
Les dice que a Ezequiel le gusta más Maradona.
Pero a mí me gusta más Argentina.
It's a globalized generation that sees football in a different way to the older generation.
It was really, really tough on Messi for me.
You don't think it was justified?
No, not at all.
So younger generations never seen Argentina reach the heights in the game, and so there is that tension.
I mean, I've heard stories my whole life of my parents talking about 86, Maradona. I've been fed those stories constantly while never quite watching it for myself.
How much does your dad tell you about 86? How much do you hear about 86?
Yeah, since I was born, maybe twice a week, he remembers me. When we drive in the car and there is not much to talk, he tells me, no, because in the 86, we did that, we did this. Stories that I have already done because are always the same.
Yo en el 86 tenía 1 año. Sin embargo, o sea, todos los de nuestra generación vimos todos los partidos, todos los videos, todos los relatos.
Video muy clásico argentino llamado creo que Héroes. Era una y otra vez cuando era chico. Llegaba de la escuela y ponía eso y lo veía a Diego y a Diego y a Diego.
Nadie no sabe de memoria el relato de Víctor Hugo de Barrilete Cósmico, ¿no?
Sigo mirando los goles de Diego.
Miramos repeticiones en casa, miramos documentales. Hay una película de los campeones del 86 que la miramos casi siempre.
Sí. El campeón imposible, muy linda.
Well, the older generation said, you never saw Argentina reach the heights. You never saw a player like we saw Maradona in his heyday.
Do you think there's a difference in generation that older people are stuck in the past and they're looking at it with rose-tinted glasses?
Yeah, but that's football, right? It's the experiences around you that define you.
Maybe I like to, it's a way to, how can I say, live again my childhood. I don't know, but I really want to win.
And so with Argentinian media generally populated by people of a similar age and therefore mentality and perhaps even nostalgia, Messi, despite becoming Argentina's leading goal scorer, became a target for those wanting to relive their childhood.
Debe jugar mejor en el seleccionado argentino. Y es una asignatura de él y es su responsabilidad. No vamos a liberar de la responsabilidad a Messi. Messi tiene la responsabilidad de jugar mejor en el seleccionado.
And no more so was this the case than at one particular tournament.
I think the really telling moment is 2011. Copa America in Argentina. The assumption is on home soil, surely Messi can lead us to glory.
But he couldn't. And knocked out by Uruguay on penalties, Argentina's home Copa America dream is over by the quarterfinals. However, it's a group stage draw versus Colombia that's most remembered.
Yeah, so I was there in 2011.
You were there?
I was there.
It was a dour game. It was such an old squad.
In Santa Fe, so back in his home province.
Messi was not at his best at all. And when the final whistle blew, the whole stadium jeered on him, booed him.
I just genuinely couldn't believe what I was hearing.
You could sense that it was against Messi, not just against the team.
The Argentinians booed Messi. I can't even fathom it.
He was not just booed. He was booed in his own province.
Wow.
Keep in mind, this is peak Messi. This 2011 Messi.
Champions League winner,
Champions League.
Ballon d'Or, that final against United.
That's why people were so angry at him, because they were watching Messi at Barcelona, winning everything, you know, tearing opponents to shreds, and they were asking, why can't we have that Messi for ourselves?
Lo que pasa con Messi que no corre una.
What was your reaction to when you heard the jury?
My reaction was,
Agarra la pelota y no la tiene como con el Barcelona.
damn Barcelona. It was completely breaking us because we wanted to look like Barcelona, we wanted to train like Barcelona, we wanted to play like Barcelona.
Necesitamos un 10 en la selección. Está jugando. Ese no es Messi. No es Messi.
And we were unable to do that. We were not Barcelona, we had no Guardiola.
But at the core of the criticism, it wasn't so much about Messi's skills as it was about something deeper.
No tiene la sangre que tenía Maradona. Ojo, no tiene la sangre que tiene Maradona.
I think it was before the Colombia game, and I went to a wine tasting, and the woman in charge of the vineyard, I was talking to her about football. She was saying, oh, we should drop Messi and it should be all about Carlos Tevez. And I was just saying, but what do you mean? Have you seen Messi? And she's like, no, Tevez has got it here.
And for Argentinians, it's there that counts the most.
Es un pecho frío, camina en la cancha.
Pecho frío, cold chest, a bottler.
Ter pecho frío es como no tener sangre, ¿no?
Pecho frío acá quiere decir un jugador que no pone toda su fuerza.
It's someone who can't produce the goods when it matters.
Como que no tiene la sangre caliente para ir a hacer lo que tiene que hacer, o como que le da lo mismo el resultado.
And with that, there's the personality.
You see, Pecho Frio is just as much a critique of the person as it is the performance.
Que le falta carácter.
His problem is he's not very expressive.
Argentines are expressive, they're boisterous, they're loud, they cry, they laugh, they shout. And so seeing Messi, someone who isn't naturally that extroverted, just they're two worlds that collide.
His demeanor goes against him because he looks like very introverted.
Sí, siempre fue muy correcto, muy educado, muy respetuoso. Sí, más allá de lo que él sintiera.
Why is that a problem? In many countries that wouldn't be a problem. Why is that a problem here?
Because we're not in Sweden, man, we're here.
You're expected to show your emotions in Argentines. That's what Argentines do.
And here, people like to see tears, blood, sweat, sacrifice.
You just can't do it. It's sacrilegious. You can't not show your emotions.
We want that. We like that. I don't know why. But that's the way it is.
And so even in his body language, Messi found himself in the shadow of Maradona.
Messi es políticamente correcto. Maradona no.
And do you think because of that, that's why Argentinians might like Maradona a bit more, because he broke the rules? He was a bit more extroverted?
¿Qué dijo?
¿Vos crees que a los argentinos les gusta Maradona porque rompía las reglas y esa cosa?
¿Sí?
You see, for Argentinians, Maradona's emotional way of being is just as important as anything he did on the pitch.
Mucha gente intenta como separar Maradona como jugador y Maradona como persona. A mí me gusta Maradona, todo Maradona.
When they ignored his repeated requests to leave him alone, Maradona cracked and opened fire with an air rifle.
Diego es la máxima expresión de un ser argentino, ¿no? Como de nuestras propias contradicciones. Yo asumo que Diego tiene un montón de facetas que no me gustan, que me enojan, y también que me identifican.
But criticism of Messi didn't stop at his supposed Pecho Frio.
There's been many criticisms of Messi. What are some of the ones you've heard of in the past?
Oh, way too many of them. You know, he's more Catalan than Argentine.
Messi es catalán.
He's never played for an Argentine club.
Quizás si hubiera jugado en Boca.
He walks around the pitch.
Ya que no corre como antes.
But there'd been this question mark of how Argentinian does he really feel?
Es europeo, que juega en Cataluña, no tiene nada que ver con nosotros.
In the sense that he doesn't feel the Argentine shirt in the same way as someone like Carlos Tevez, for example, the player of the people.
Yeah, does he sing the anthem loudly enough?
No, todo como. Mírame cómo lo cantaba Maradona el himno. Basta de este pibe. Basta de este pibe.
Meanwhile, right after leading Argentina to that 2014 World Cup final, Messi leads Argentina to the Copa America final in 2015 and 16. Yet both times, they heartbreakingly lose on penalties.
He's lost these 3 finals in successive years, and he's devastated.
He was fed up. He had missed the penalty in the shootout.
You talk to players who were there, and apparently Messi in the dressing room was just sitting on the floor between benches, just weeping.
Un Messi que no se siente acompañado con su pueblo.
And I think he just sort of thought, I can't take this anymore. I can't take annual disappointment, and it's always him who gets blamed.
And he was fed up. He was over with it. He said,
que ya está, se terminó para mí la selección. Ya, como dije recién, son 4 finales. No es para mí.
And he then quits international football.
And that's when Messi found out how Argentina really feels about him.
They begged for Messi to come back. People went to the streets to ask for Messi to come back.
Yeah, I mean, there's people taking to the streets. It was this constant campaign.
Uniting behind the campaign message, No te vayas Leo, or Leo don't go, a nationwide campaign began to convince Messi to reconsider.
The No te vayas campaign was everywhere. It was on street signs, on banners, even in the underground.
Yo veo jugar a él y me desvivo.
And they realised that the future without Messi is a worse future that makes them less likely to win things.
Tiene que volver. Perdone que me emocioné, pero es eso lo que siento.
His brother did.
He actually went onto the streets.
Yeah.
Where? To the obelisk?
Yeah.
Oh, seriously? They went to the obelisk to ask for Messi to come?
Yeah.
El obelisco, it's a giant structure in the middle of Avenida 9 de Julio in Buenos Aires. It became the symbol of Buenos Aires. It became a symbol also of Argentina. And it's the place that football fans had chosen to celebrate their own victories. So I think the fans going to the obelisco to claim Messi to be back in the national team was a counterculture protest.
And reflecting how much he meant to them in particular, it was the reaction of Argentina's youth that was making the biggest impact.
No te vayas, si te vas, nos vamos a quedar sin final, no vamos a poder llegar de vuelta.
From handwritten letters.
Tengo 8 años y estoy muy triste de saber que te vas.
To emotional outbursts.
Es porque eres el mejor del mundo y no se tiene que retirar nunca, ni cuando tenga 200 años ni nunca.
It was the generation still waiting for their own 86 that were leading the sentiment.
No te vayas, sin vos la selección no es nada. Te amo, Leo.
And whether it was the crying children of his homeland or just his sense of Argentinian duty, eventually, Messi came round.
But that is the moment when it changes.
So this new Messi was suddenly there.
And it felt like he was more willing to take things by the scruff of the neck, you know.
We received Messi the White, like Gandalf, you know, the new version of Messi.
Sí, hubo un cambio notorio en su personalidad.
He had something of a fire burning inside him.
Es como acordarse de Maradona a veces.
Eso, exactamente.
Me encanta que usar el término maradoniano o endiegado.
And so he dyes his hair, he gets more tattoos.
He was red carded in 2 games for Argentina.
You know, he was scoring up to Gary Medel.
He also refused to receive the runners-up medal in the Copa America 19.
He started attacking Conmebol in public.
Repito otra vez, en esta copa se cansaron de cobrar boludeces. De mano boluda, full boludo, penales, pelotudo. Y hoy ni siquiera fueron al bar.
But just the fact that Messi could, you know, criticize Conmebol, call them corrupt.
That's the South American Football Federation.
Exactly.
There was a huge spat with the press, which he'd always been pretty good with the Argentinian press before that.
Estamos acá para comunicarle que hemos tomado la decisión de no hablar más con la prensa.
Antes Messi era, no, pará, está todo bien, pará. Y ahora no, y ahora el loco es Maradona.
And the people who wanted Messi to be a little bit more like Maradona kind of got their wish, right?
Did you like that?
Yes.
Why? Because he came more Maradonian, maybe more Argentinian?
Because he showed he's not Pecho Frio.
What did he show? That he's...
Character, strength. Blood! He showed that he has blood.
The retirement, and then coming back, it was almost like it cleared his head. He'd always been slightly cowed before that. He'd sort of tried to fit in. And I think he thought, well, actually, I've already retired. I've already seen the worst. So I'm just going to be me.
¡Claro! Lo que demostró es tener huevo, tiene coraje, es grande en todo sentido. Aprendan a conocerlo. Los que hasta ahora no lo conocían, esta Copa América lo conocieron. Siempre fue igual. Lo que pasa es que ahora se dio a conocer.
And as for the absurd idea that Messi didn't feel Argentinian,
his favourite food is Argentinian, his favourite films are Argentinian, his favourite music is Argentinian.
His wife is from Rosario, they've known each other since they were kids. His whole extended family is still in Rosario. He visits them very frequently as well.
And of course, Anybody who listens to Messi, he's still got a very distinctive Argentinian accent.
Y es un pibe que se fue a los 14 años, que podría tener un acento español, y sin embargo se come las heces como cualquier rosarino o rosarina.
I mean, have you heard him speak? Have you heard him speak? I mean, he speaks with not just with an Argentine accent, but with a Rosarino accent.
But nothing sums up Messi's love and desire to play for Argentina more than the story of how it all began in the first place.
It was 2003, and Messi's father contacted us in a Gráfico. At the time, Spain were lurking, trying to convince him to play for Spain, and Messi didn't consider that as an option. He wanted to play for Argentina. The problem is that no one knew him in Argentina yet. And the father of Messi asked if he could send us some videos so we could see him play and maybe alert or notice the manager of Argentina, because he had no direct links to AFA. I remember when we were seeing the videos, these amazing videos that now we know from YouTube and internet, but at the time they were a treasure that we received directly from Jorge Messi. And of course we had to publish that story, make the comparison with Maradona, and we contacted the national team manager at the time, and it prevented Spain from convincing Messi to play for them. And this, I think, sums up how much Messi always wanted to play for Argentina.
And so, with a new Messi who evidently appreciates Argentina, and in Argentina feeling the same way back, a new connection formed.
The connection the players have with the national team at this point is at an all-time high.
Messi no era el mismo Messi que hoy.
La gente cambió con él. Lo que pensaba de él cambió.
Sin lugar a dudas, creo que también se acerca mucho más al pueblo y por eso el pueblo lo abraza más.
And so, when Argentina crashed out at yet another World Cup, this time at Russia 2018, whilst he still faced some backlash, the blame starts to shift, notably to their erratic manager Jorge Sampaoli.
Y un equipo a la deriva, con un entrenador que, bueno, define así las cosas.
Argentina were finally realizing the problems were far bigger than Messi.
So imagine that between 1969 and 2009, in 40 years, Argentina had 9 permanent managers. And in Messi's 15 years in the national team, he had to deal with the same amount of managers.
Yeah, I mean, when you take into account the fact that since Messi made his Argentina debut, no manager has ever completed a World Cup cycle. Like,
what, the 4 years?
The 4 years. No manager has ever managed that.
Before, it was unthinkable to have a manager for less than 4 years. And suddenly Messi discovered that it could be 2 managers in 1 year, 3 managers in the course of 3 years, 2 presidents, a normalization committee coming from FIFA.
And so the Argentinian FA went on the hunt for yet another manager.
So the Argentine Football Association have no money, and they're desperately casting around for a cheap option.
The cheapest they find is Sampaoli's assistant, Lionel Scaloni, who in contrast to Sampaoli and previous coaches, had no experience in such a role.
It was absolutely crazy to give the national team the top job in Argentine football to someone who had never coached before.
Scaloni had never coached?
No, he was only assistant manager.
And it turns out they get really lucky because he's really good.
But it wasn't just tactically where Scaloni brought a change.
He's very calm, he's very laid back, he's very humble, his ego is minuscule.
In direct contrast to the ways of Argentinian football, Scaloni takes a new mentality.
And he had this mantra he kept repeating, we win, we lose, nobody dies, it's fine. People get too excited about football. It's only football. And that, I think, is what Argentina needed.
A lot less tension in the dressing room, a lot less pressure as well.
They have a very, very calm man.
So, as time went by, it became less and less surprising when Argentina started winning games and winning games and winning games because Messi was happier right there.
But then, just as things were clicking into place for Messi and the national team...
There's sad news coming through from the world of football this evening. Argentina great Diego Maradona has died at the age of 60.
Como Maradona no va a haber otro. Desde ayer que estoy llorando.
And so suddenly it's like, this is the blackest day in Argentinian history.
Es un pedazo de vida que se te va y que festejaste. Y que... Perdón.
Me cuesta mucho hablar de Diego desde que Diego se fue.
There's people out on the streets weeping. There is this horrendous grief and this real public mourning.
Argentina's reaction to losing the man who embodied them was as emotional and chaotic as you'd expect.
The government realised they can't contain this grief for Maradona. So essentially, COVID regulations come to an end in Argentina at that moment, the moment of Maradona's death.
Realising the gravity of the situation, the Argentinian government decreed 3 days of national mourning. And despite being in the height of lockdown, Maradona's coffin's put on display in the presidential palace, where tens of thousands of mourners come and pay their respects. And in a fitting tribute to Maradona and football in the country, this brings out the best and worst in people, where fans from both sides of the country's most notorious rivalries unite in their grief, whilst riots and protests unfold when others can't see the wake.
Justamente allí, bueno, la policía que se rearma, decíamos en Avenida de Mayo.
And so again, a spiral in Argentina looked for hope in its national team. This time at the 2021 Copa America, the first international tournament Argentina would play post-Diego.
And you have to consider the fact that that Copa America was supposed to be held in Argentina, and we were stripped away from it.
With the Copa America moved to Brazil due to Argentina's inability to cope with the tournament mid-pandemic, Messi and his squad were forced to spend 6 weeks in isolation to try and finally end Argentina's trophy drought.
They weren't located in Brazil. They also had to travel constantly from Argentina to Brazil and back again.
And they couldn't see their family.
Exactly.
And yet in that adversity, I think that's where Argentina really bonded, and it's where Messi really emerges as this vocal leader.
He became kind of like this vocal leader, this motivational leader.
And you keep seeing him on the pitch, talking to players in a way he just hadn't at previous World Cups and previous tournaments.
He's a different leader, and it's fabulous to watch.
Messi leads Argentina all the way to another final, this time against host Brazil, where pre-match shows the leader he's become.
45 días sin ver nuestra familia, muchachos. 45 días. El Dibu fue papá. Fue papá y no pudo ver la hija todavía. No la pudo hacer upa.
Yeah, that's another Maradona moment.
¿Por qué? Por este momento. Porque teníamos un objetivo, muchachos. Teníamos un objetivo y estamos un pasito a conseguirlo. A un pasito, y ¿sabe qué es lo mejor de todo? Que depende de nosotros.
And you also see, I think, just how much Argentinian players wanted to win for him.
Diego Martinez, who had said that they weren't winning a trophy with Messi, they were winning for Messi.
And that, I think, is a very unusual thing for players to be desperate to win an international tournament, not just for themselves and for their country, but for a specific player.
And so as Argentina followed that speech out onto the pitch and finally won their first trophy in nearly 30 years in what was Messi's 5th final with the national team, it was no wonder the focus was on one player.
The best reflection of that you can possibly have is when the final whistle blew. Messi drops to his knees, and what every other player in that Argentina squad, they don't celebrate for themselves. They go and celebrate with Messi.
Finally, Messi had brought a trophy back to Argentina. But for the Argentinian football purists,
Copa Americas don't count.
I mean, the Copa America is clearly a major tournament. However, it is not the World Cup.
Obsessed. Obsessed. We are obsessed with the World Cup.
The World Cup is an obsession for Argentines.
For Argentinians, success is the World Cup. And that's it.
It's a country that needs to win a World Cup.
But Messi needs the World Cup.
Messi always said and repeated that he would exchange all his individual achievements, all his Champions Leagues, all his countless league titles for it.
And so as the 2022 FIFA World Cup in Qatar approached, with Messi now 35 years old.
Ahora nunca, now or never. I mean, this is the moment for him to do it. Because he said it several times before, he's not going to have another shot. This is the last time he will ever try to win a World Cup for Argentina.
In Argentina's first World Cup since Diego Maradona's passing. In Argentina's first World Cup that was played during their summer. In Argentina's last World Cup with their Messia, it all felt like the perfect time to end the nation's 36-year wait for their greatest obsession of all.
Argentina always had expectation at the World Cup, but this time it was really justified. This was not just a look at the players we've got, we really should be winning this. It was look at the players that we've got and look how well we're playing.
Hay muchos hinchas que ya dicen,
pero
somos
obviamente
campeones.
Que todos queremos campeones.
No, pero otra cosa.
Pero hay un montón hasta se tatuaron Argentina campeón Qatar 2022.
Claro.
They boasted the most informed team in the world.
37 games unbeaten.
Argentina had played Italy, the European champions, in the finalissima and had beaten them very, very convincingly 3-0.
And they had the new Maradonian Messi.
The best player of his generation, possibly the best player of Argentina's history, best player to ever play football.
So with their first group stage game against Saudi Arabia, who were the worst ranked team in the World Cup,
La Argentina está obligada a ganar mañana.
Veamos, tenés un minuto. No es tan complicado ganar mañana tampoco.
The expectation wasn't so much if they'd win, but by how much. Yet somehow...
When we lost against Saudi Arabia, I was like, that's it.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, how can you lose against Saudi Arabia?
Where is Messi? Where is Messi? Where is Messi?
That's a disaster for the country.
Yeah, so I mean, the media reaction is, yeah, it's exactly what you'd expect.
Lo que no te podés permitir es perder con Arabia Saudita.
Of course, people freaked out after the result against Saudi Arabia.
El mundo del fútbol te mancha con esto.
That's a very Argentine thing.
Dolido, ¿qué te voy a decir? Dolido, la derrota fue un golpe al mentón. No la esperaba nadie en el mundo del fútbol, nadie.
And there was a slight sense of, hang on, I've seen this from Argentina before.
Going to the World Cup as favourites and flopping in the group stage? For Argentina, it felt like deja vu 20 years later.
People remember 2002, in which Argentina also came at the World Cup, you know, in such a great form.
But they're eliminated. They don't make it through to the knockouts.
And that was the big fear.
And so I think that Saudi Arabia game awoke all those ghosts again.
But it wasn't only the World Cup that was reminding Argentina of 2002.
Crisis económica, pobreza y desempleo. Es lo que enfrentan miles de argentinos que se volcaron a las calles.
It's always a tough moment for Argentina, but especially now, I mean...
El 50% de la población por debajo de la línea de pobreza.
It's very, very difficult for Argentina to get by every day.
Because it wasn't just Maradona's passing that had caused turmoil on the streets of Argentina.
Several policies that have sent our economy into chaos.
And so, similar to 2002, 2022 saw demonstrations and protests once again become a daily part of Argentine life.
Yeah, I think there was a sense of Maradona's death, it was almost sort of the final straw, that everything was going wrong.
Oh, the amount of families who are living without electricity right now.
The economy was a mess, unemployment was rising, inflation was rising.
It's a country that at this point lives with inflation.
Inflation is running at 92% year to year right now.
By the end of the year, it's about to reach 100%.
So you imagine what that does to your income. What the money that you earn in January is worth half 12 months later.
And so more than ever, this World Cup was about so much more than football.
For Argentines, this World Cup's more than just a distraction.
Needed something to celebrate, something to believe, something to be hopeful about.
Yet one game in, it already looked doomed.
So after the Saudi game, we couldn't lose anymore. One more loss and we're out.
They play Mexico next.
If we would have drawn against Mexico, we were out in the second game.
So basically it was sudden death from that moment on.
And perhaps because of that, Argentina played even worse against Mexico.
You see that first half against Mexico, they were all, extremely feeling the pressure that one wrong move and they would be out.
All the trouble they built up since 1990, all of that would have been weighing on them even more heavily.
They were really nervous. They were shaking.
We've messed it up again. We get to another World Cup and we've messed it up.
So Saudi Arabia wasn't even the low point. It was half-time against Mexico.
Yes, we're drawing 0-0.
So if that game stays 0-0, Argentina would have been bottom of the group.
Okay, we still have 45 minutes.
But you need a miracle.
We needed a miracle.
And that miracle came through?
Who else?
And it's Messi again. It has to be Messi.
Who else?
It's the perfect shot.
And the ball went exactly where it was supposed to go, like right next to the post. Someone as great as goalkeeper as Ochoa could not reach that ball. I mean, what can I say, man?
Like, it wasn't just that he scored a regular goal. It was another one from outside the box from nothing.
Just like how they described Maradona in '86.
It's a single moment where one player has grabbed the tournament by the scruff of the neck and won it.
Now it was Messi's turn.
El primero de Leo fue con bronca, como esas jugadas de Jordan, de Diego, que tenían que aparecer de alguna manera con un salvador.
And then that was it. Argentina suddenly remembered how to play football again.
They remembered they had Messi, let's be honest.
That Mexico win's followed by a 2-0 win over Poland. And that takes them to the knockout stages, where they beat Australia in the round of 16 thanks to another goal from... And so with Argentina booking their place in the quarterfinals against the Dutch and only 3 games away from potential World Cup glory, Papa Nani and I decided to head out to the land of silver to experience firsthand what could truly be the ultimate once-in-a-lifetime story.
Well, a very warm welcome here to Buenos Aires. Time now has just gone 20 minutes past 10 in the morning.
Next time on Once in a Lifetime.
It's got some elation to attention, like
Alemania, hablando de México 80.
Even though they still had a one-goal lead.
Argentina, lo que da el tiempo que se tomó.